All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to post the link to the agenda and today's slides in the chat. And I'll kick us off. Welcome. My name is Nicole. I am the Scrum Master for the PatternFly team, and this is January's PatternFly community meeting. I'm recording this meeting so that afterward I can distribute the recording as well as the slides for today and the agenda to the PatternFly mailing list following the meeting. And this is the first meeting of 2022. So there's going to be a handful of updates from the PatternFly team in terms of process and plans for 2022. We're mixing up the style a little bit of this meeting. It's an experiment. So if you have any feedback for that, let me know. I'll jump right into some updates in terms of PatternFly process and such. Yeah, so there's the agenda, which we will walk through. But like I mentioned, I've posted a link to the agenda in the chat. If you want me to do it one more time, I can in just a moment. But as far as PatternFly 2022, since we're not going to go step by step through the release highlights or the release notes like we often do at this meeting, in an attempt to kind of change things up, I've linked in the slides links to the published release notes that you can find on the PatternFly website. I'm going to copy the link address to, this is the React release notes. I'm putting them in the chat and the core release notes. If anyone is interested in looking at them and has any questions about anything that they see on the release notes, feel free to put them in the chat throughout this meeting, and we can answer them while we're here. We also do have other opportunities to go through some of the release highlights and release notes in the future, and I'm going to talk about that in some other meetings and things we have planned for 2022. But there's the link to the release notes if anyone wants to see all of the things that were included in the latest release broken down. You can find them there. One of the new things that PatternFly is trying out right now is using GitHub's project boards. We previously have been doing a lot of our milestone planning and roadmap planning using a handful of different sources of information, and some of them were you needed a special account to have access to, and it weren't necessarily public, but putting them all onto PatternFly's project boards. Everything is now public. You can see everything about our milestone planning and roadmap on GitHub. And so I have some links in the slides here that you can view PatternFly issues by milestone or by component name. You can see our Scrum board if you're curious for a closer look at the current status of all the open PRs, things like that, using the various tabs on the PatternFly issues project board page. So if you have any questions about that, let me know, but this is just a little bit more transparent way to see our process. And if you have any questions, let me know. We're still kind of learning how to move over all of our processes to this new kind of gold source of information. So if you see anything that's missing or if you're confused, definitely let me know. Next up, PatternFly is hoping this year to improve our website and documentation. And part of that effort, we're doing sort of an information architecture study. And anybody who is willing, who has any familiarity, whether it's just barely any or lots with our website, we would love some diversity of experience with the website represented in the study. We do have a short study screener that, I meant to copy this link and put it in the chat too. So that's why I clicked on it. But there's the link in the chat if you didn't have the slides open. But it's just a very quick screener to evaluate to what extent you might be able to help us with our study and improve our website and documentation. If you have any opinions or thoughts about how it's currently organized, especially, that'd be super awesome and helpful if you'd be willing to fill it out. The screener should only take like 5 minutes. And then maybe you get contacted as a follow-up if you fill it out to help us. That'd be super awesome. All right, the next thing. So we have just identified 3 components that we are going to aim to promote out of beta at our next beta promotion release, which is scheduled for the end of this quarter. So it'll be at the end of March. So you have a couple months to let us know if you have any issues or feature requests or have had any frustrations with any of these components. And if anything is raised, we can delay the promotion, or we can prioritize addressing those so that we can get these promoted. We'd like to see our new components promoted out of beta so that they can be as stable as possible, as quick as we can. And these 3 that we've identified are a little bit simpler in terms of their features. So the first is the progress stepper component. So that's used for, giving an indication of progress for multiple step processes. We have a slider component as an input for values on some sort of sliding scale. There are links on these slides to the documentation on the PatternFly website page if you'd like to look at them closer. And the last one is the tile component. So that has some of our new, by default, it uses some of our new slightly raised selected tile styles, which is kind of fun. So there you go. So those are the 3 components that are promoted for, or are candidates for promotion for the end of March. And we'd love feedback on those if you have any. Let's see, the next thing, we have published a public PatternFly community calendar. It has links to, or it has events on it, one of them being the community meeting. So if you want to have the community meeting on your calendar and see any updates that might come for rescheduling or anything like that for the community meeting, including this calendar in your personal calendar will keep you updated there. It also includes 2 new opportunities that hadn't been public facing before. One is the new developer office hours, where the target audience is anyone developing with PatternFly, building products or UIs with PatternFly, to be able to talk to developers about any implementation frustrations, any issues that are being raised, any questions or feature requests, to share ideas and propose feature requests and things, and talk to the developers in a more conversational way. So the developer office hours happen every 3 weeks shortly following each release. That is where we also will go over some release highlights and a few more of the products who are at Red Hat that use PatternFly have more representatives there. So you might get a wider cross-section of some of the ongoing development work if you go to the developer office hours. That's on the public PatternFly calendar. And the last is a design share, which also happens every 3 weeks. And that is more focused on the ongoing design work and presentations from designers. Most of the work being featured on the design share haven't been implemented in the HTML, CSS, or React repos yet, but they will probably soon be. So it's a great place to get feedback on design and to see what's coming down the road. So if you import the public community calendar using the link that I'll put in this chat too, just in case that's easier for people, or it's also going to be on the slides. Yeah, you'll be able to see when all those meetings are happening. The last thing I'll note is that the PatternFly community calendar does also indicate target release windows for each of our upcoming releases. So that'll give you a little bit of a sense of when we're aiming to do each of our releases. The next PatternFly office hours are scheduled for February 2nd, so that's Wednesday, and the next design share is the week after that on February 9th. All right, and that's all the updates I have for PatternFly administratively. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. But now we're going to turn to, we have a few different presentations. The first is from Harry Devine, who's been working with building a project using PatternFly. And I just wanted to hear a little bit about what he's been doing.
Good morning, can you hear me?
I can hear you, it's a little bit muffled.
I'm not sure what the microphone I have on this PC. It might be a little, I don't think I have an external one. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can switch to a headset real quick. And,
all right.
I
all right, we'll give you 1 moment. No problem. I'll take this moment to remind everyone that there were a lot of links, and I put a lot in the chat for people while we were going, but when I send out the slides at the end of this meeting to the PatternFly mailing list, the slide deck with all of the links enabled will be sent out as well. So you'll be able to access them again in the future. All right. Give Harry just a couple more moments. And if we want Harry, we could also go to the next update and come back if you want a little bit more time to sort it out, unless you think you're close.
Yeah, if you could do that, that would be good. Because
Okay.
I've never set up my headset on this PC before. So
Oh, sure. Yeah, I know how that is. Okay. Yeah,
Right.
we'll move on and then we'll come back.
Thank you.
We'll move on. The next update is going to come from Core. And I think we'll pass it off first to Michael Coker. So I'm going to stop presenting and hand it over to him.
Thanks. Okay. I thought I was going to go later, so I didn't quite have my thing up. So
I'm sorry. No rush. Everyone, we're not in a huge rush. We're good. We're good.
I got it. Okay. Here we go.
Sorry to put anyone on the spot.
Okay. Yeah. So
I'm going to stop you and say if you could zoom in on what you're sharing right now, it's pretty small from our view, I think.
Yeah, let me actually try sharing from my laptop display.
Okay.
I should probably always be doing that because I think that's a lot more of an accessible resolution. Let's see.
Yeah, that looks better. Awesome.
Okay, awesome. So we had a lot of things in the last or in this on our release notes that we haven't covered in the agenda this time. So just a reminder to read all of that. But just a couple of things that we've been working on and have worked on. I'd like to highlight just in a little bit more detail than we normally do. So this is a great format for that. First, just something that we have a proof of concept up for, or work in progress, PR, for implementing accent color, or basically just custom styles for our form elements that are able to be restyled. This proof of concept is with our check and radio buttons or inputs. And there's a cool new feature in CSS that is almost supported cross-browser. Safari's kind of lagging behind in this, but it's not a big deal. It's called an accent color, and you can declare this on an element, and for these browser rendered form elements such as inputs, check and radio, you can apply a color theme to those. And so there's, if you look in the core repo, it's this pull request where you can see a PR build that will show you what the workspace looks like with PatternFly's primary blue applied to these elements instead of the default blue that the browser is going to apply, which doesn't match PatternFly, but that's fine. It's kind of a standard element and is also inconsistent across browsers. And so it's also a subtle change visually for me, at least anyways, on my browsers looking at it, between the default that the browser provides and PatternFly's blue. So seems like an excellent opportunity for a progressive enhancement. But anyways, I've got this up in a work in progress. I also took another approach just to compare and contrast the types of ways that you can do this sort of thing for these elements, of being a little more heavy-handed in the styling approach, and something that you would traditionally have to do before this accent color feature was available, and that's basically hiding the native element and then redrawing it using some technique. And here I've used pseudo elements attached to the inputs. You know, I have a whole bunch of tabs I was going to show. I didn't move those over here. In this issue, or in the PR rather, you'll see links to a couple of code pens. And this was my playground for just kind of figuring this out and seeing what it looks like. And so this first one is using accent color, which is cool. So those are primary blues. And these are the browser's default blues. Subtle change, but noticeable and pretty cool. Also, I took this as an opportunity just to see if I could introduce another non-invasive style to these elements that might be also a good progressive enhancement. And that's to increase the size of them just a hair. And so that looks really good. Doesn't cause much of a layout shift. Certainly no block layout shift like vertical shifts. Horizontal shift, yeah, because the elements are just a bit wider. But I don't know. I think they look better. They're more accessible. I would see that as a win personally. But we'll figure that out in the PR and see how folks feel about it. And then I have another code pen linked in there, and this is where I was more heavy-handed in the approach. And you probably can't see it over Google, but there's like a little animation applied there and an animation applied to these radio buttons. It's the same deal. These are the old styles, because you really have full control over how these elements look, as opposed to just applying a color. So I could make the radio buttons look like a stop sign if I wanted, if you wanted to, because you really have tons of control over that. So anyways, that PR is up. If you feel free to check it out, leave comments, so that's cool. And then the next thing I'd just like to touch on, I'll try to make this brief, is if you go to the PatternFly website under developer resources and click on Red Hat font, we introduced some updates to the Red Hat font. This is a fairly significant update. And so we didn't just push these to the default web font that is included with PatternFly. It's an opt-in. And so that means that you're going to need to apply a class to your body element to pull these changes in. And in our next breaking change, we'll make these font changes the default, so that body class isn't necessary to pull these in. So an overview of what changed in this update. So first off, there's a GitHub Red Hat official Red Hat font repo. I think that's where I'm at right here. That this is where the Red Hat font is, and it includes all kinds of font goodies, web fonts, desktop fonts, ways to build them, and all this sort of stuff. And then they have I forget what you call these, but the GitHub hosted deal for that repo that shows the font in use and all these different font weights that are now available that weren't before, including a new mono stack, which is awesome because we're using just a custom stack right now of a font that we don't bundle with PatternFly for our mono font because we didn't have one. So now there is one, and that's great, and it looks a lot better with the other Red Hat text and display fonts that we use in PatternFly. A big feature here is variable fonts. So variable fonts are really awesome, kind of a new thing. And basically it allows you to define an axis in a font that lets you do different stuff with it. And here, this is the weight axis demonstration. And you can't do this with a regular font. Typically a font has a font weight or font weights, and a font weight, and then you tie a font weight to a particular font file. Well, this is a single file that bundles different weights inside of it. And you can fine tune adjust. And so instead of having, say, 300 font weight, 400 and 700, which is, maybe traditional or something like that, you could have 301, 302, 304. You could have as many as you want, and you can see that reflected right here. And so this isn't the browser doing it. It's actually being served from the font file, which is awesome. And then another addition with this new font is a really cool feature that lets you specify what are called tabular numbers. And What that basically is so traditionally numbers, just like characters, unless you're using a monospaced font, are variably spaced. And so 0 takes up a different amount of space than a 1 character, and and so on. Tabular numbers is basically for when you have, say, data rich sets of information and you want your numbers to align, to tell the browser will tell blocks on the page to use monospaced numbers instead of variably spaced numbers. And so if I just apply, all I'm doing with this button is applying a class to this page, I could do it per block. I could do it on a single div, a single paragraph, whatever, it doesn't matter. It just converts the numbers in the block to the monospaced version of those. So it doesn't change the text, just the numbers. And that's awesome for representing stuff inside. Like this first thing, this is actually a table. It doesn't really look like a table, but it's because I don't really have anything in it. And this is a list, just a PatternFly list. And so if you wanted your numbers to align, you got a bunch of user IDs or something like that, you want it to be easily read or scannable or comparable or something like that, then that's a really good use case for that. And then actually in this link that we have under dev resources, there's an overview of kind of what changed. Let me just make sure. Opting into the new font does drop support for IE11, which is okay. Well, presumably PatternFly doesn't officially support IE11 anyways, and that's because they dropped a format of the font, so reduced the bundle size. I mentioned there were new weights in the two, and then available opt-ins shows you how to opt into some of these different features in PatternFly. So here's a class to opt into the new font updates. Here's a class to opt into the mono font. Here's a class to opt into the variable font files, and then some examples here. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you for those updates. We have one more update from Core about a new component coming from Matt Nolting.
Hey, thanks, Nicole. Share my screen here. Those of you who don't know me, it's been a while. I'm Matt Nolting. I'm a principal developer on the Core side. I've been with Red Hat for almost 8 years now. So it's been a while since my last presentation. You guys see my screen?
Yes, it's a little bit small again, though.
Okay.
So you might try to zoom in on your browser a little bit.
Is that better?
It's a little bit better. Can you do like a Command plus a couple? There we go. Yeah, that'd be great. Perfect.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah, so the Truncate component we introduced, I guess, 2 sprints ago. And after some further testing and some gapping issues that we were having with the first implementation, went back and refactored it so that it performs a little bit better. And that specific gapping that was happening between the middle, sorry, we have a default state, right, which is truncation at the end of a string, and then in the middle here, and then at the start of a string, right? And those all work great. The middle we were having the gapping issue with, so we refactored this a little bit, wherein you have now a set string at the end, so that if you're using a file extension, you can see whatever that file extension is, like zip or HTML or tar, whatever. And yeah, so we made these updates that kind of tighten the space up, so it's a little bit more pleasant, I guess, to look at. And some of the features that maybe we didn't necessarily know about is using this method, which is purely CSS. Number one is a performance feature in that if you have a table, for example, and you have 100 entries using the Truncate component, you're not using JavaScript to calculate how those entries are truncated, especially with the middle example. And also, a double click on a truncated example will actually select the entire string with CSS magic. And I think that's it for a brief update there. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a small one.
Sure.
I'm not sure how this is implemented. You mentioned that this is all done via CSS. So I'm guessing we don't have much control over the truncate size of the last word in the middle variant, if you know what I mean.
Huh? I think you actually do. So, so the React component actually, Nicole, you might be able to tell me if I'm wrong or right about this, but allows you to set that second string. It's only for the middle example, you have to split the string, right? But I think the React component does allow you to set the number of characters in the second half of the string or the end half of the string.
Oh, right.
Is that right, Nicole?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the React implementation hasn't been released yet, but it will be released in our next release, and it will include allowing that second half of the middle truncation to be configurable in size. Yeah.
Cool. I was actually thinking that I'm not sure that we need any complex configuration because we have well, the most wide use case, and in my opinion, it's just take the last word and the extension, which will in most cases be the last word in the file name, which provides great value. So if we can just easily do that, just present the entire last word with the extension, I think that will benefit most of the use cases.
Sure. Yeah, I think you're able to set the minimum number of characters in the entire string that is being truncated, and also the because you only set the number of characters on either the entire string or the last file extension part or end part of the string. So I think you have control over both of those things.
I see. Okay, I'll look it up. Thanks.
Matt, is there any limitation to the minimum character count for the first section before middle truncation?
That I don't know. It would depend on, it would be whatever the end string is plus whatever the total string value would be. So, because the first part of the string is the part that, the reason we use, we're splitting the strings because we're not using a monospace font. We don't know that you want to use, we don't assume that. And so it's hard for, because the spans are still inline elements, it's hard for both truncation. The CSS truncation does a great job at splitting characters off if you use overflow ellipsis. And that's the only method that I was able to find that allows you to do that. And Firefox supports custom text overflow. Right? So you could say, don't add an ellipsis or anything, or you could set like that first or the second half to not to actually truncate the same way without an ellipsis or whatever, but it's not widely supported yet. So that's not a viable solution. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think with all new components, they're released in beta at first, and so the React component will be released in our next release, which hopefully will be by the end of the week, and people have plenty of time to play with it and let us know if they have any suggestions when it comes to how we've implemented and the API. And if you have any questions that the docs are not answering, that would be great to hear. So stay tuned. All right, I think that's all for core updates today. I am going to see, is Harry ready to go now, or how are we doing?
Do I sound any better?
Oh, you sound great.
All right. Yeah, I've never set up a microphone or anything on this PC, so I was scrambling around trying to, and then when I put a headset in, it connects to 3 other devices, and I had to go, clean all them up. So, as long as you can hear me, that's good. So, what would you like me to discuss?
Well, Harry's been very active in the PatternFly Slack over the past few weeks. He's been building his own project using PatternFly and interfacing a lot with the PatternFly team. And so I'd love to learn what you're building and kind of why you chose PatternFly and how it's gone.
Sure. So I am actually been using Red Hat for probably 10, 15 years now. I work for the FAA here in the United States for the Federal Aviation Administration, and we do use a lot of Red Hat products. We use Red Hat Satellite, IDM, Tower, virtualization. That PatternFly look and feel is something we've been familiar with for a while. A few years ago, when we went to Red Hat Summit, I think there was a booth there. It was up in Boston, but there really wasn't a lot of a lot of information there as far as how do I get started. So it's kind of something that's been on the back of my mind for a while. And so my youngest daughter is playing softball, and I just, because I have some website experience and some Red Hat experience, they asked me if I would take over the website for the organization. So I thought, all right, well, what a good way to start by trying to figure out how to revamp their website with, you know, something that would fit the Patternfly look, something simple, you know. And it, you know, I kind of started there, and as you can tell by a lot of the questions I've been asking, you know, I wasn't really sure where to start, but you know, I think I'm making my way through pretty well. So I have interacted with a lot of the folks on this call. I know some of the names are familiar, so I know I've been, you know, you guys have been helping me out, so I really appreciate that. So, and do you want me to give a little demo or something, or?
If you're willing, that would be awesome. We'd love to
Sure.
see how it's going.
Let's see, where's the share screen at? Which one is it? Hopefully this will be up here soon.
Yep, I'm actually seeing it. So yeah.
Okay. Is it too large, too small?
It's the text is a little bit small. So you can either zoom in on your browser a little bit, or if you even just reset, yeah, that worked great. Perfect.
Okay. So at any given moment, I got rid of most of them, but you know, at any given moment, see this tab, I'd had 6, 7, 8 of them open at a time, looking at different things. And you know, where I started, you know, was trying to figure out how do I make React work and stuff of that nature. And then I just used Google a lot, and then with the help of the team there, I kind of was able to get the ball and run a little bit and everything. So this is kind of the site that they asked me to take over, and you can see it's a Wix.com site. So it's one of those, you just edit it, drop things in. But everybody in the organization has kind of had the same feeling that, you know, it's lacking something. It could probably, you know, do a lot better. So I tried to do a lot of the same type of things that are being seen here. You know, I'm just going to do, you know, I'm not going to go to every tab, but I'm going to go, you know, I'll just try to go quick and look through and give you an idea of what it looked like to where I'm going from. So like, this is their fields and stuff like that. So what I came up with was this, and with the help, like I said, with the help of a lot of people. So, you know, I have a home section. What really started me in the beginning was I wasn't sure, how do I get this area out here? You know, the signups and the next board meeting in that area. I spent literally 2.5 weeks trying to figure that out, and it was one line. I believe it was Nicole that actually helped me with that, and then it was then the clouds parted and said, okay, and we're good to go. So yeah, so I've just been trying to use a lot of the different React components in here that I've been finding. You know, I kind of use the card component here, and I think there's a flex in there to make everything with little, you know, everything kind of line up. There's a little CSS in there for the headings and stuff like that. You know, this was the where I tried to read in data from a external source, whether it be a JSON file or a string, or a database, which I haven't done the database part yet, but a lot of these were from that, how I figured out how to, or how it was helped. You guys pointed me to that. You know, there was the different tabs within the tab sections here that, you know, I know was part of some of the examples that you guys have. So it's just been looking through the Patternfly site and just seeing, you know, what can I use, what can I not use. This section here for the fields, the status, I actually have that. I believe Mike had helped me with that extensively for a while, that I can actually go, it actually pulls this data in, and I can make a determination on this label up here based on the data. I can go through and determine whether or not I can set this to partial or open or closed. These fields right now are all up or down based on the data that I pulled in. This tab for the directions, I actually was able to go out and find a Google Maps React component that I was able to figure out how to, it took me a couple of days, but drop that in there with the lat longs, and there's an oversight view of each field they're talking about, that the girls play at, can directions and a map of it. Some stuff is not even implemented yet. I used an accordion component here to take their FAQs, and then I also figured out there's a couple components that I saw people had written as far as putting, the Twitter and the Google or the YouTube stuff up in the top. They had that at the bottom of all their pages down here, just kind of. So I thought it would be good to have it up there in the masthead. So I don't know, probably not the most exciting thing in the world, but it's everybody I've shown this to said, wow, they liked it. They think it's really smooth. It's concise, and just trying to make use of a lot of the components that is being provided. So
Awesome. It's looking so great. I've watched it build and get developed over the past couple of weeks, and I'm very impressed.
Thank you. Yeah, and I can't thank everybody enough. I don't want to start naming names because I will miss somebody on the list there. But everybody that's helped me out on the Slack channel, I thank you all very much, and two, I'm not going anywhere.
Oh, awesome. And if you have any feedback about what some pain points might be, about what sorts of questions you had that were tough to find answers to, like, we would absolutely love to hear them. So
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely do that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else. But thank you so much for the time, and hopefully I didn't bore anybody too much. But like I said, I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the help. And
Awesome.
I'm actually planning on, some of the stuff that we have that we use for our work stuff. Like I said, we all have Red Hat. We have Red Hat Linux, Ansible Tower, everything I named. I used to have my RHCSA, but it expired a few years ago. And with the pandemic, I haven't been able to get it renewed yet. But, I do have that type of experience. So just trying to branch out and go down this road as well. I've actually done all of the web stuff for our, for our site that we maintain at the, for the FAA, our little piece of it. But like I said, I used a lot of PHP with the Dojo toolkit. So I understand some of how things such as promises and request posts and stuff like that work, but the true JavaScript way that it seems like React.js uses, I'm not really that familiar with. So just trying to bridge that gap, but you guys have helped a ton. So again, thank you all very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. All right. And with that, we will move on to the next round of updates. We have a few coming in from the React side. I believe first we're going to hear about some Resize Observer updates from Joachim. Are you ready to go, Joachim?
Yep. Hi. 1 second. Okay. So I've got a code sandbox open here with the with the way that things are currently in PatternFly React, and you can see on the right-hand side that we have a sample demo application, which is basically the page component. It has like a toolbar within the masthead at the top, and it has site navigation in the sidebar over here. And of course, when you change the window width, the page will respond responsively. You can see that as I start to drag this in, the first thing to go will be the site nav that will automatically close for you. Of course, you can still expand it if you want to. And then the next would be for the toolbar icons to collapse down. And then finally, let's see. Yeah, the masthead stacks. And then finally, the tertiary nav gets these side buttons. And this is all default behavior. This has been already been going on for a while. These are all media query based. So when the window width changes, all of this happens. But what we've noticed is that if the layout changes, for example, if you pop open a drawer, when you have elements within the layout in the page actually changing by themselves, then it will not behave responsively. Like if I drag this out, you can see that basically nothing happens, and then you'll get some pretty ugly artifacts with things overlapping each other and stuff like that. So that's where responsive behavior really kicks in. And one common area where we saw this issue occur was with, we have a quick starts library that also occupies like a drawers panel on the right-hand side, just like here. So with a lot of applications that are using quick starts today, they would probably run into similar issues where if they have a resizable quick starts drawer, it would take space away from the layout, but it's not behaving responsively. So Matt and I, we worked on some stuff over in PatternFly, and it's been promoted up. I think it's still in a pre-release, but now when you open up a drawer, you can see that it behaves responsively just the same way as you would expect to see if you were to change the window width by itself. So you can see the site nav auto collapse there. You can see the toolbar icons collapsing down. The mastheads becoming stacked. So it'll behave responsively even if the layout within it is changing. And as an additional bonus, another thing that you can get for free is there's one more new prop that you can pass into the page component called getBreakpoint, which basically takes a function. And by default, in PatternFly React, it uses a function that looks like this, where based on the current width reported by the page layout, it'll basically apply the different view modifiers. So, if the view is wider than 1200 pixels, it'll apply XL. But this can be changed. For example, right now, you can see that the toolbar starts to react pretty early, and it starts to stack pretty early. And you might not want that in your own application. So you could actually change now if you wanted to when it responds with which modifier based on the width. So if I were to change this over into my getBreakpoint do function, let's see, that should reload. Yeah, okay, so now if I open up the drawer, you can see that it won't collapse down quite as early. You can see that it'll now collapse only here, and then the masthead will only stack once you get to this spot. So that's like an additional bonus for using resize observers, is that you can also change how you want, like when you want the application to break, instead of just relying on media queries, which only work on the entire window width. So that's all I want to share. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. All right, next up, we have a demo from Titani. I'm not sure if I should call it a demo, but whatever you're going to do, a presentation from Titani.
Yeah, it's not so much a demo as me talking. But yes, I just wanted to share the efforts that we're making in the React repo for PatternFly for converting our examples over to TypeScript from JavaScript. A while back, we'd received some feedback that would be nice to have our examples in TypeScript for our TypeScript consumers. So we took that feedback and investigated what we could do to make that happen. We wanted to also make sure that we still maintained our JavaScript examples for our JS consumers. So a developer on the team, Zach, wrote a parser to convert TypeScript to JavaScript so that we could maintain our JavaScript examples as well. So he also added a toggle to the website so you could toggle between the two. And actually, Mike Turley will be demoing that right after I speak. He went through a big effort of converting our examples in the React table over to TypeScript, and made some other improvements there that he'll be demoing in a couple of minutes. So we have started making the conversion of our examples over in the React core space. So far, we've converted about 16 examples. They're not up on the website yet because a lot of those happened over our past sprint. So you'll see those in our next release. And we'll continue to chip away at that work. I'm going to just post a link to the issue, the Epic issue that's tracking this effort. And hang on. All right. And this is the issue. So it's an Epic issue. We're just tracking every component that we have and the work that's going into converting the examples. So far we have about 16 that are either merged into our workspace, which we'll see in the next release, or in progress. And there are about 83 components that need to be converted all together. And our effort with converting our examples, we're also taking time to, if we decide, convert some of our class components over to functional components. This is more of a judgment call for the developer because it would be a huge effort because we have quite a lot existing there already. So if time permits and it's worth the effort, folks are converting the examples over to functional components with hooks. And going forward, all our new components will be written with functional components. Yeah, and I think that's about all I had to talk about. And like I said, Mike will be able to demonstrate this for us.
Thanks, Titani. I can take over the screen share here.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, so as Titani was describing, I've recently overhauled some of the examples for our table components, all the examples for our table components. And this is both for the newer composable table and the legacy table. These were all previously implemented as class components in JavaScript, and they're now function components with React hooks in TypeScript. But just as Titani was describing, if you're not using TypeScript, you don't have to worry. This TypeScript button here will show the TypeScript source, but then we have this wonderful button that Zach created here to convert this from TypeScript to JavaScript. And it does a really neat thing. This is actually, there's a lightweight TypeScript transpiler built into the site here. So if I undo this, if I change something here in the TypeScript, it's live updating here. And then if I convert it to JavaScript, my changes are persisted. So this is not just swapping out two source files that we have. This is actually like converting on the fly. And you can continue to live edit as you go, either in TypeScript or in JavaScript. And it maintains your code style, your spacing and everything. So that's really cool. Yeah, for the table examples themselves, when I rewrote them, I took the opportunity to try and modernize them as much as possible, just with React best practices and things like single sources of truth and separating business logic and presentation logic. Just trying to kind of set an example for what a conversion on some of these more complex components might look like. One of the things I've learned by using the table in my product work was that when you have data that's constantly changing and the table's re-rendering, it can be tricky to reconcile your state and make sure that everything stays synchronized and doesn't get messed up. And you can, not mess with your user interactions while your data is changing. So that was one of the main things I tried to apply to these examples. There were some places before, especially in the legacy table, where state, like what rows you have selected, for example, or kind of combined with the data in a single array. So when that data changed, you had to sort of manually update or lose that state in that array. So one example I can show is that in the selectable source, we now have, let me see if I can get to this. The selected repo names is its own little minimal state. And so the row data has been separated out into this array that is just data like you might get from an API that doesn't have any kind of PatternFly logic in it. And then we have some minimal state here, and then later in the component, they're composed together so that either one of them can change separately and everything kind of stays together. I can show a more complicated example here of just in this nested column headers example, we have some sort of nested data that's a little bit more complicated in its structure. And in the example, I have a TypeScript interface for what you might actually get from a real API, some objects within objects with things you might want to organize in a certain way in your database, and then mapped to how you want to lay that out in the table itself in a composable way. So you can look through and see some of those, but basically that's it. I was just trying to do what I could to sort of separate that business logic and that presentation logic. You should be able to drop these into an app and have your data updating live and everything should still work. But yeah, in general, just trying to do what I can to modernize things. And I'm excited to see all these other components converted to TypeScript, and just keep an eye out for these JS buttons to turn into TS buttons across the site.
All right, awesome. Thank you. If anyone has any questions about that, feel free to ask in the chat. But we're going to move right along because we're getting close to the end of the hour, and we're going to hear from Matt Carano about what we are working on.
Thanks, Nicole. Share my screen up. So as usual, I'm going to wrap things up and just give a kind of quick preview of some highlights of things we're working on. As Nicole mentioned at the start of the meeting, if you want to see the kind of the complete list of what's in our currently next milestone, you can go to the GitHub issues board. This is a few highlights. So on the design side, we are currently beginning to work on exploring a visual refresh of PatternFly. PatternFly has been out there. PatternFly 4 has been out there now for almost 3 years, and so we've kind of felt like it may be time to take a look at, refresh some of the visuals a little bit. We're not looking at anything, doing anything drastic here, but just both modernizing and also looking to correct some problems or issues that have come up over the 3 years we've been out there. So this is, we currently don't have a time frame for when this might roll out into the field, but we will keep you posted as we move along with this. We're also looking at filter patterns and looking at improving, updating our guidance on filtering in PatternFly, filtering, filtering table data, for example, through the toolbar. Looking at and some enhancements to our label group, adding editable groups, providing more guidance on how to perform CRUD operations against the label group. We've been looking at introducing a query builder component, which would allow users to build more complex Boolean queries. And then also we've been doing some work on our website, looking at improving the user experience for navigation, component pages, and our home page. And this is kind of being done in conjunction with some of the research work that Nicole mentioned earlier around exploring our website IA and organization. And then on the development side, some of the things that we're working on should be, you should see soon, where we have introduced, well, first we continue to work on refactoring some of our drop-down components using a more composable approach. We have been working on introducing some new navigation options. Flyout and the tertiary expansion were both introduced within the last quarter, and the last new option that we will be working on is a drill down navigation. That should be coming soon, as will file upload enhancements. We're introducing an optional row striping for tables, meaning to highlight every other row, which makes it a little bit easier to scan across rows in a very dense table. We're working on an overflow feature for alert groups in many of our products. And things that fire toast alerts can very quickly fill the screen with toast alerts. So this would be a feature that would allow management of those toast alerts by revealing them incrementally versus throwing them all up on the screen at once. And then finally, we're working on kind of re-looking at drag and drop a little bit in the library that we're using and trying to make that whole drag and drop implementation a little bit more robust and accessible. And again, you can see kind of a complete list of what's being worked on by Milestone in our new issues board. So that's about it. Anybody have any questions? Okay, now I'll turn it back to you, Nicole, to wrap things up.
Awesome, thank you. I'm just going to share the last slide on the slide deck, which is a list of some links that might be relevant to grab once the slides are sent out in the follow-up email after this. One is a link to join the PatternFly mailing list, one to add the PatternFly community calendar to your calendar, and contact information for me if you have anything you would like to present or ask as a follow-up after this meeting or for future meetings. There's my contact information. Thanks everybody for joining this week. I will be posting the link to the recording, as I've mentioned, and all the slides. And I look forward to next month's community meeting. Thank you so much for all your time.
Thanks, Nicole. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thanks a lot. See ya.
Thank you.